Hey guys, thanks for joining me for another Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia video. Today, as promised, we have the Kelger solo. And of course, this was actually a very free and easy solo. And, you know, someone had asked me the question, like, if I have Rubicante, should I still get Kelger? And I would say yes, because Kelger actually just feels safer to play than Rubicante, because Rubicante, like, I even remember doing solos on, like, even on his own fight, and it still felt dicey at times. You're highly relying on that C-Sphere to, like, heal him up, and it's kind of like this balance of, like, having his last stand go off and then hoping he heals up before he takes more HP damage, whatever. Like, Rubicante can kind of feel unsafe at times, even though he is very good. Kelger just feels so safe, and watch this just super easy solo here, because, like, obviously in his fight everything is dodgeable, provided attacks can be evaded. Like, this guy just can't be touched. So these enemies, they can try to debuff him, they can try to do, you know, their own off turn. It won't matter. He's just not touched, and he's just going to counter nonstop. So we're going to kind of compare, you know, we can compare this fight to my fight where I had a full team of 3 very busted characters, and you'll see why people like doing the soloing. You're going to see that this fight is actually more efficient. So even though I had like Reno and Beatrix, like full decked out, really busted characters, this fight is more efficient both on turn count and how fast we get to the force gauge. It's actually, like, it's crazy, and this is why this character is so valuable, and I said this for newer players. You can see I'm going into the newest Shinryu fight, which is the hardest type of content in the game, and just with this one fully built character, we are soloing it out, like, no problem. And this can be a godsend for newer players because, one, you can basically beat Shinryu fights with only having one character and not worry about having to build up other characters you maybe don't want to, so that you can hold off for better characters. And then for lockout content for maybe mid-range players, this will allow you to get deeper into lockout because you won't have to use teams of 3 characters. And having Kelger and Rubicante is very good because now you've got 2 characters that can solo fights. Highly, highly efficient when you get to lockout content, where you can burn 2 fights with 2 characters instead of 6. That's a lot of efficiency right there. The other thing too that you can possibly do with a character like this is, you know, if you're going through, if you want to try to maybe carry a character, right? So it is possible, because Kelger is locking on, as long as the enemy isn't doing like powerful AoE like HP attacks, you might even be able to carry a character just in your second slot to get a mission done for a ticket. So I think there's just so much value, and then not only that, just that he is actually insanely meta relevant, does a lot of insane damage, and even if you want to use him traditionally like I do on my 3-person teams, he's still going to be a good asset there, right? I think part of the reason I was so excited about this guy and knew how good he was going to be is I've been a big fan of Edge as an LD-only character. Still very good, very viable as an LD-only character, and now here's Kelger, basically a uber mega premium FRBT Echo version of Edge, essentially, and just putting out so much damage, dodging. You can see here, even without a force charger, like, when the enemies attack us, it helps build our gauge, and we're kind of sticking toe-to-toe with the enemies here with just Kelger. So I think, you know, don't get Kelger though and just expect to solo everything. And we saw that with Rubicante. Like, you definitely can't just solo any fight in the game. And I think fights that will shut down Kelger are ones with very oppressive force times, that basically if you don't cancel them, you're just going to sit there and not do damage for a long time. Now, Kelger is the type of character that maybe could actually sit through like a 20-turn force, but that's a lot of enemy turns to basically not do damage, and it might burn you out, right? So it just might be a lot longer fight, and you might have to go through 2 force times or something like that. But I think having like the Kelger burst phase can definitely help you get a jump on the force gauge. But you're going to see here, the enemies are definitely going to beat me to force. Luckily, though, obviously, since this is Kelger's fight, them being in force won't really slow him down. He's going to be just fine. I think the other thing that's going to stop Kelger solo runs is enemies that do maybe a force attack or have some type of very oppressive attack that could like one-shot him that are not evadable. That's why you have to bring like a Gladio called as like a safe net, something that's going to make sure he's safe, or Raijin. You know, Raijin and Gladio are very good defensive calls that can maybe save Kelger if you're in that situation. Maybe you can scrape by a fight then if you've got that, right? So the enemies, they're going to trigger their force here. And it's dodgeable, so we're good. And Kelger does make this fight look like super, super easy. But if you're trying to do this traditionally, maybe without a tank, like, it could be difficult, because these enemies, they steal turns and they brave gain and just have like instant kill amounts of brave, and they steal turns. So I assume that, you know, the intent here is you really do probably want to have a tank of some kind going into this. And I think a lot of you all are pulling for Kelger, so this fight should really be no problem. I could see, like, even for a newer player, being like your first ever Shinryu run that you beat, because as long as you build up Kelger and pull for him, this is a very, very easy W. Very easy W here. Now, mine is like super souped up on stats with like the red crystal room and everything, but you definitely like don't need that to solo this for sure. You're going to see we get by with plenty extra here so that if he was doing like less damage, it would be fine. So the enemies are basically down to what, 90% going into force. So we got 10% shaved off just with all of the insane counters. Because the thing is with these counter characters like Gladio and Edge, like they were doing like 500k counters, and that was considered good because they do so many. Well, Kelger's spitting out, 1.1, 1.2 mil counters without a force, so he gets really crazy when the force time gets going. So here we go. And this is why solo runs can be really effective with these characters. It's just more enemy turns and less of our turns that we're seeing, and that's what you want, right? That's why we take off the speed passives. That's why we put the speed down, crystal passives, right? Like things like that. And so honestly, the other two party members are kind of just holding him back because it gives you more party turns and you actually don't want that. But I like running full teams of 3. So, if I had the choice, I would probably run my Beatrix Reno combo anyways, just because I think I have a lot of fun with that. But yeah, this is just a good example of what you can do. If you like solo runs, here's a solo king right here. Kelger does it all himself. So here we are. We're still at turn 10 of force. Kelger's first turn after popping the force, we are at 515%. So how efficient is that? Like, how many characters can pop their force and be at 500% without using a force turn, without using echo, and it's just their turn? And now it's like, all right, well, guess I will use an echo and stay at 10 turns of force. By the way, we're only on turn 6 on the fight. So the enemies just having more turns is just to our benefit. All right, so here we go. And look at the rate things are going. Like, we're going to be at 9-9. We're going to be at max gauge pretty much by the time Kelger has another turn. Just look at the insanity here, right? Countering off huge damage. And I talked about this a little bit in the last video, but if you add up his damage over time, man, it is insane. And it's even more emphasized here on the solo run. Because we could count the number of enemy turns and we can maybe do some quick math. So on Kelger's next turn, let's look at how many enemy turns are going to come after him. This last stretch was a pretty big one. I mean, do we even get another Kelger turn? I think so. Yeah, we should. We should. I should have time for another echo here. But look at this. Still haven't burned a single force turn. And we're approaching 999%. This is why people are touting this guy, right? This is why he's so good. And I feel like he just does it so much more quickly and more efficiently than Rubicante does. And Rubicante is still crazy good. It's just Kelger's like a god. Here we go, 900%, and look at that, 50%. We're popping off the Shadow Wolf, and Shadow Wolves are hitting, even solo, he's still almost 7 mil on Shadow Wolf, right? And there he is about 9 mil. We're going to call it about 10 mil here. All right, so look at that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so I'm going to do some math here. So we've got 6 enemy turns, right? So every enemy turn, he's double. His first strike is going to essentially be 10 mil apiece. So we're going to say about 20 mil on the first strike per enemy. And then he's doing like AoE 7 mil. So we're going to say 20 mil plus that 7 mil is about like 14 mil. So we're saying about 34 mil per turn. And we're doing times 6, right? So 6 times 34. So in this instance, right, this stretch that we're seeing from that enemy turn till Kelger's next turn, Kelger's putting out 204 million damage in one Kelger turn. So if you think you want to compare him to Astos, right, like Astos can put up 125 mil on one turn, and that's like with launching, max burst, like everything like set up for him, right? This is Kelger solo. And in one Kelger turn, we're not even going to see it because these enemies are going to die. But I think if you roughly add up all the damage he does between his last turn and this one, you're looking at about 200 million damage. And that's not even like a burst phase. And that's all happening in just one character turn. So when you look at these defensive-based characters, like you look at the damage over time, and it is absolutely nutty how much damage he's putting out. So this is why Kelger, is probably the best damage dealer of the month, even though he's not a traditional damage dealer putting up really crazy damage in one singular attack. You look at per Kelger turn and the amount of damage is ridiculous. These enemies are just falling apart. Okay, and then look at this. First strike. Double first strike. The enemies are basically gone at this point. So Kelger got his one more turn. So I would say, yeah, if someone wants to pause my video and actually add up the legitimate damage, but my estimate was we did about 200 million between turns there, which is kind of crazy. So here we go. Kelger finally just gets to do an attack, and he's going to finish him off. And look at this. How efficient was this run, right? Our 3-person run was 14 turns. This one was 8 turns, and we had pretty much an entire force time still left. We were at 999% for much more of the fight because Kelger just built it up so quick with all those enemy turns. And there you go. Just an absolute annihilation of this fight. So anyways, let me know what you think of this literal beast. Thanks for watching. We'll catch y'all on the next one.